Okay. Emma, Diem, a platform with a great tagline. I love it. How did you come up with the idea?
The original idea came after I had to take the morning after pill for the first time. This was ages ago now, but I kept coming back to this experience online where I was like, why does searching for answers feel so in direct contrast to the real world information sharing and that I have experienced in group chats over dinner parties, all of that sort of experience. And it just felt like searching the internet felt very lonely. And I wanted to think about how you could create digital environments and products that felt a little bit safer to ask those questions, ask questions that are often difficult to Google right now, where you're looking for validation as well as the facts. And that's really what Diem offers. Is it's a search engine, but it has a community layer. So you can always learn from others. It becomes more personalized the more that you use it. And it's really fun to see what people use it for.
Did you find that community vibe in the girls' bathroom at 1 a.m. every now and then?
I think most people have. Yes.
So it was a place when you were younger where you could ask. So you had those places where you could go?
No, I don't think I did when I was younger. Okay. I think that's more just the vibe that we were trying to get people to picture rather than a literal interpretation.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. So how did the experiences, like the experience you just talked about with the morning after pill, how did they shape your vision for building the community online where people can connect deeply online and offline?
I think there were a couple of things that we wanted to capture in the experience, that being one, a feeling of no judgment. And we spent a really, really long time building up the community culture to enable that environment to exist at scale. And I think that when people think about the word community culture or the sort of term community culture, it feels a bit fluffy and not really that important, but actually it's like everything. If you look at platforms of scale, say take a Reddit, and you see the culture that exists there, which is actually quite terrifying to a lot of women, that really impacts both how much people post there, what they feel comfortable sharing, and sort of everything in between. And so we put a really concerted effort into cultivating that, whether it be from technical moderation, manual moderators. We have ambassadors called Oracle ambassadors who reply to everyone in the platform, and really wanted to make sure that feeling of lack of judgment came through, and that feeling of psychological safety that comes as a result of that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask those questions. So what practical steps did you take to ensure people feel safe and trust the platform? Is that through moderation or?
It's through a few things. One, there's the moderation side of it. So we have technical moderation, which basically picks up on various trigger words or sort of bad, quote unquote, bad words, and prevents people from posting them in the first place. The other is manual moderation. So we have not only our community team, but also these Oracle ambassadors that I mentioned, who are volunteers within the community.
Oh, wow.
And they basically make sure that everyone feels seen and heard, and they can help us sort of scale that manual moderation without having to build out a team of thousands. We also have very strict community guidelines, which I think there's one thing writing community guidelines, is another thing actually adhering to them. So things like making sure that even if you're discussing a more difficult topic, you're still abiding by the way that we want you to talk about it and the way that you should phrase it. So, and also like providing basically an understanding to people that there are going to be topics that do feel more uncomfortable. So we have, like, for example, a lot of conversations around eating disorders or mental health. And that's great. They should be able to discuss those things, but less about the ideation of, I don't know, an eating disorder, and more about like the recovery journey or seeking help and resources, and having that context in our moderation tools is incredibly important.
Oh, where did you find the ambassadors or people who want to work who moderate those things? Out of curiosity.
A lot of them just they were avid users of the product. We also did tell people they could apply to be ambassadors, but most of them came from just using the app, and we invited them to be ambassadors.
That's great. Wow. Is there a certain taboo or misconception in your field or your life that you feel like society needs to open up about?
Oh my God, everything. No.
You have 5 hours.
I'm like, where do you want me to start? I do think, a lot to do with the experiences of sort of like underrepresented communities. As a woman, I can obviously speak more personally to that area or that experience of life. I think that so many things we feel a lot of shame and stigma around, and that affects how we talk about them and if we talk about them at all. And really just like feeling less alone in your experiences as a human builds so much confidence in other areas of your life. And that's one thing that we found with Diem is people who utilize Diem to search for answers and discover advice is that they actually report back feeling significantly more confident, not just in that area of life, but in everything.
Okay, great. So Morgane, you started Good Woman with a similar vision around the same time, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. And you created a supportive community around hormonal health, so it's a bit more specific. How did you, what drove you to create an online space where women can connect and ask questions?
Yeah, actually the community came a bit later, but we founded Good Woman also from a personal experience, and I felt lost when I was diagnosed with PCOS. And it's a bit similar with you, like feeling lonely, confused. PCOS is a hormonal disorder, and at that time I haven't heard about it. I didn't know what it was. Also, it was back in 2016. And the medical system couldn't give me the answers. Also, when I was looking on Google, there is like a lot of information, an overload of information, and that also makes me felt like really confused. But what can I trust here if you're looking for the answers? So I kept thinking about like, what if only we had like a safe space for women to connect and share experience? Maybe I wouldn't feel alone. And as the journey continued, I decided to take my health into my own hands. So I retrained and I learned a ton of stuff about my body, my hormones, also how I could eat and move according to my cycle. So a whole world opened up to me, and I realized like, probably that knowledge would also be beneficial for other women. And that's why we start first by educating women around topics such as menstrual health, nutrition, fertility, and so on. So we start with those webinars, and we really created that aha moment for a lot of women. And from those webinars, we wanted to keep on having those conversations. So we started to build that community that also like came really organically, and that's really nice. And only later we added the products.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in that community, you can chat as well. You can ask questions. Is it similar? Does it work with moderators, or who do you chat with when you use the Good Woman platform?
Today, when you go to Good Woman, you can chat with experts, and it's like in a personal, safe environment. We started with a Facebook group. We still have that private Facebook group, so people can still interact with each other. But then you see, certainly in the beginning, and it's interesting that you say that we have those good ambassadors and those moderators. It's true that in the beginning, I had to put a lot of energy in showing people that you can ask personal questions, and also like always answering them so that they feel heard and seen. Because sometimes people feel not that comfortable to ask questions in public. We often get like more general questions in the private Facebook group, like where can I find a good gynecologist? Why? Back in the days when we started with the Facebook group, I also got like a lot of DMs. DMs about like, I'm trying to conceive, but my friend is also in the group and I don't want her to know, or I feel super insecure about my acne, I have breakouts, I just want to stay anonymous. So that's when we realized like, okay, we need to build a kind of safe environment where people can get fast advice, where you don't need to wait for hours to get like an appointment. And also, certainly in our case, I think a lot of women, when they go, for example, to the gynecologist, they just have like 12 minutes. They're sitting there naked with their legs open, then they're not going to talk about the fact that they feel insecure because they have breakouts.
I had like a kind of a big health issue about 4 4 or 5 years ago when I left my last job. I was completely burned out to the point that I was experiencing the physical symptoms of stress. And a lot of that was to do with my hormones. I'd been operating essentially on like adrenaline for years. And when I stopped working, I was like, I had like chronic acid reflux. My hair was falling out. I had like the worst period pain I've ever had. Like I was like vomiting. Like it was so bad. And thankfully, my mum, who is like super on top of everything to do with her health and hormones, she was like, you're going to an endocrinologist. And I was like, what are you talking about? And so I went and they like figured everything out. But if I hadn't have had like my mum saying, hey, this sounds like it could be your hormones, I would have no idea. And from that point onwards, I've always like, anytime a friend has had a similar experience, I'm like, might be worth getting your blood levels checked and like just seeing if there's anything up there. And so I would say it can affect everything, but it's really the education around it is so important.
Yeah. I think also awareness, because when I think now about how I felt as a teenager, actually I was not well. I didn't feel well. I had like a lot of mood swings. It had also like a huge impact on my relationship with myself, but also with my girlfriends or partners. And it's only later that you realize like, okay, I wasn't aware. I didn't have the knowledge. And as soon as you are aware, you can start looking for solutions or advice. And I think that's important. That for me, step one is always like knowledge or understanding like, okay, this is not normal. Because also for years or generations, we have heard that it's normal that you have mood swings. It's part of being a woman. But it's probably because you're going to have your period. But if your mood swings impact your daily life so much, it is not normal anymore.
I think more than that is like I was put on the pill when I was like 15, 16. And I was on it for like 8 years. And I came off when I was, I don't know, like 24, 25, something like that. And I truly felt like a different person. And like my brain felt clearer. I felt like I was more myself. I didn't have mood swings like all the time and all these different things. And you're like, when I was 16, that was like 15 plus years ago, there was zero education on like the impact of birth control, anything like that. And I just think that even if you should be able to make the choice to go on birth control if that's what you want.
Of course.
But you should also have all the information available to you about what it can do and what it can impact beyond just stopping your period or preventing pregnancy. And I think that is just like the awareness around that is so important, especially as it's often used as like a Band-Aid solution for other situations.
Like the only solution.
Here
the pill, this is the only solution.
For like your acne. And I'm like, have you been to a dermatologist? Like, or have like I know that it's very helpful. It can be very helpful for things like PCOS and sort of illnesses, or I don't know what the right term is for that. But
endometriosis as well. There's specific conditions.
But it's also kind of a Band-Aid too. It's like we just don't have any research.
Yeah. Platforms like yours are great for people who, like me, are maybe a little bit more introverted, don't want to ask questions out in the public. Like you can tell it's much more approachable online. Is there a way for you to transfer those online connections into offline friendships or events? Or how do you make sure people still meet in real life?
I have a lot of opinions around why I don't think that everyone needs to be friends. I think that
No, you're right. I
just think that everyone is being forced into these environments where they're like, okay, well, now you've met each other with the shared experience, you have to now be friends. And I actually think that we're discrediting the value of fleeting engagements that they don't make them less valuable to you in that moment. Sure, they might not be your best friend for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years to come, but it doesn't mean that exchange wasn't helpful. And that's kind of what we say with like the idea of like the energy of a girl's bathroom at 1 a.m. Like for anyone that has been in a girl's bathroom at 1 a.m, it's like people giving pep talks, they're giving out tampons, they're like sharing advice with strangers. Everyone is drunk and everyone is like trying to support each other. And
in that moment.
Not to say that everyone in DM is drunk, but like there is that environment. There is that environment where where I just think that we're forcing all these like quite unnatural engagements that don't need to happen, and it's quite overwhelming. It's like the number of times I get asked to like be part of, hey, join this founder community or join this or join that, and I'm like, that's amazing if I didn't already have a network, but like we're almost being like overstimulated with offers of friendship and not the tools to actually form the friendship. We don't know how to make friends a lot of the time anymore, certainly as adults. And for us at least, we do have IRL or in-person community gatherings. They're called salons, and they're hosted by various members of the community where they bring together their network or a network of people. But like that's almost like secondary to us. It's not
the end goal.
No, it's not the end goal. You're not coming to Diem to like necessarily make friends as number one. You might make friends over time if you engage with each other for a longer period of time. But actually what you're there to do is like get the resources to like put it into the real world.
Yeah.
And like learn about yourself, learn about how to form friendships, how to break up with friends, all of that sort of stuff. And I don't know, I just think that we're very overstimulated with this concept of like community, and I don't think anyone really understands what it means.
Do you in Good Woman, do you have in real life events?
Yeah, it's not our main goal, but I think it's important to bring that online community sometimes together in an offline event. And for me, it was super nice to see the first time when we did something offline was after 1 year of Good Woman. It's funny to see that it was really good vibe, because it was like-minded people understanding each other, where they're going through. And then you heard like really nice conversations. And I also heard people really making the beginning of a friendship at one of our events. And then it's like, okay, we can make a difference here also in friendship building. And also, I think certainly later in stage, it can be interesting to meet people that are more maybe aligned with what you think or your goals or where you want to go in life. And I think maybe in Europe or Belgium, it's different, because a lot of people have their fixed group of friends for years. And then it's true that when you are older, it's harder to make like new friends, because you never learned how to make friends. But then you come in a community where people think a bit the same as you.
Yes.
And that's really inspiring for me to see that people connect and feel good and
Feel good, yes. We had that conversation on the plane to New York as well. Like the friends we made in secondary school aren't necessarily the friends that go with us through our 30s, although society sometimes shows like friends kind of put that on us, like those are your friends. But you evolve as a person, and your friendship group kind of evolves with that, I think.
Yeah, people come and go, I think, in friendships. And I didn't realize that a few years ago. Yeah, I think maybe in the US it's easier to like realize that people come and go.
Yes.
No, I think it's the same everywhere. I think that it's a lot of, like, obviously there's a huge loneliness epidemic, but I don't think that's because we don't have the opportunities to meet each other. I think it's because we don't get taught how to make friends, because we've grown up in environments, a lot, certainly Gen Z have grown up like with this idea of validation coming from people liking their pictures or and like that sounds wrong, but it's actually very accurate. Like the number of posts that we have in DM being like, I know this sounds bad, but I sometimes post pictures and no one likes them. Like, does that mean that like I'm not pretty, or does that mean I'm not this? And I'm like, are you genuinely asking that question? Because like I'm like 31, so I grew up not with that like trained, like my brain trained in that way. And I think that that's really affecting how we connect with each other and how we seek to connect with each other. And so that's more what I mean when I say, like, obviously there is a huge loneliness epidemic, but I don't think it's for lack of there being communities. It's because we don't know how to form the connections and shared experiences when we are in those environments.
Okay. Wow, that's interesting. People asking that question. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, we have so many, like, how do I make friends? Like, it's one of our top class questions.
Okay.
What are like 3 tips how to make friends?
I think, oh my God, fast fact. One of the biggest ones is honestly just, it's like being vulnerable, like stop stop putting your like facade that you've cultivated online forward first. And it is like, that's what I think people can do with products like Diem, is you can learn how to go that layer deeper because you feel confident to share your actual story with this like stranger on the internet. And that even though that might not feel like you're building a sort of muscle, you really are. And that can then help you in those real world experiences.
Okay.
So yeah,
Ready?
vulnerable.
Ready to make new friends?
Yeah.
So Diem primarily focuses on women, girls and non-binary people. Is there a specific reason for that choice?
A few reasons. One, the entire internet was not built for them. And the whole world in general was not built for them. And so we wanted to create a space that you could find answers to questions that had a huge sort of data gap on them in the real world. And the way that we can then index and use those conversations moving forward to help other people if they're searching for the same questions. So yeah, really it was the need is greater for those communities. There's such a huge lack of education and support and resourcing around everything from reproductive health to navigating like gender dynamics in relationships and like money questions, all sorts of things like that. And it's not just like there's so many statistics out there, but one of my favorites is that 70% of Google searches that start with the words "is it normal" pertain to female health questions. Okay. And 100% of Google searches that are gender tagged in the finance category are for women. So there's not a single Google search. Well, I don't know if it's true anymore, but as of 2 years ago, there was not a single Google search in the people asking questions related to money that had 4 men at the end of it.
Oh,
and
wow. Wow.
And so like just those 2 facts alone, you can see how there is just such a greater need.
Yeah.
And also search engines, if you want to get into the technical details of it, Google, for example, uses Boolean logic, which basically optimizes for shorter search queries to pull up more optimal results. So if you write less words, you get better search results. Okay. Research has shown that male searchers tend to write less words in their search queries, whereas female searchers write more words, whether that be because we use more words or because we have to add more context to our searches, like gender tags for women, etc. And that means that our search results are actually less good. So if
that's insane. Actually.
Yeah, and so they're less good, and then there's less data in the world. So overall, you're getting a worse experience on the whole. And so that was basically why we started targeting.
Specifically
those, and it's not to say that like we do have men that use Diem, but the need is greater for female non-binary folks.
The driving force behind this podcast is Good Woman. Good Woman is your trusted source for hormonal health support, offering education, expert guidance, and supplements. From day one, they've been more than just products. They've created a community where women can openly discuss personal and often taboo questions. We currently live in a time where communication is emphasized. We constantly encourage people to speak openly about their problems, but it's often easier said than done. Why do you think it's important to push for more open discussions, and why is it crucial to break taboos?
I don't know. I think there's just so many things that we pretend in society doesn't happen, and that just doesn't help anyone, men, women, like truly anyone. It doesn't help. So I don't know, like progress, I guess.
Yeah.
Like make people feeling less bad about themselves. I think that's one of the hardest things to witness in Diem, is just because we do have a majority female community that utilize the product, just like how people think so lowly of themselves, or like so little of themselves, probably the better description.
Yeah.
And it's really sad. So I think that, and a lot of the time the things that they're asking or thinking about themselves would be solved by just knowing that they're not the only person to think that way.
What do you want to add?
No, I think, like you said, like it's helping people not feeling bad. And I'm asking myself, like, when do you feel bad? It's when there is a lot of shame. And breaking taboos really help to break down that shame and confusion with women who or people who are struggling with issues. And I think if you have those safe environments again where you can ask your questions or seek advice without judgment or fear, then I think you can make better informed decisions about your health, for example. So that's why for me it's really important to keep on breaking those taboos. And
one thing that people don't correlate with the importance of breaking taboos or having access to things like abortion, for example, that are typically deemed these sort of like morally conscious choices, is like the economy. Like the economy actually performs better when people understand more about themselves or have better solutions for their health. And I think there's like a statistic where it's like the US economy, it's like loses 170 billion or something like that from not having access to abortion. Oh, wow. And I just think that there's so much that the whole society benefits economically, as well as from a mental health perspective, when people just stop pretending these things don't exist and stop pretending that that like women need access to birth control, or that people can, I'm trying to think of the best description, but like just basically like if everyone feels less shame around like things that they feel shame around currently, like sex or sexuality or access to reproductive care, everyone benefits. It's not just the women in society. Like the whole of the economy gets better.
Yeah. So, of course, I had to take a moment and check out Ask Diem myself. And I asked the question. I have severe mood swings the days before my period. Is this normal? So I'll read you the answer. So just for the listeners, so they can grasp the idea of the platform. Hormonal changes during the menstrual cycle can cause a range of physical and emotional symptoms, including mood swings. These changes can also be influenced by external factors such as stress, diet, and exercise. While it's normal to experience some mood change during this time, if they are severe and impacting your daily life, it may be a sign of a more serious condition such as premenstrual dysphoric disorder, PMDD. It is important to track your symptoms and speak to a healthcare professional if they are significantly affecting your well-being. There are also various coping mechanisms and treatments available to help manage severe mood swings during menstruation. Remember, your mental health is just as important as your physical health. It is always okay to ask help for help and support. So that is not something Google can come up with, right?
I obviously think Diem AI is great, but the community answers are what make it really special.
Great. Okay, I'll check again.
Yeah, check again.
Check again.
Is it not that like the Diem AI will also use data from the community?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So we can over time fill in data gaps from the conversations and the previous community discussions that have happened. So yeah, it sort of builds on itself.
I think it's an amazing answer to if you struggle with mood swings. Yeah. It's a good answer to start from. Like, okay, this is not, if it's really severe, it is not normal. I can take action and maybe speak to people about it. And I think if you have these kinds of tools, it helps you to like just give that extra push. Like, okay, we can find a solution.
Yeah. I do also think we're all lucky. We live in societies where talking about periods and talking about reproductive health is not that taboo anymore. Like it's certainly some people feel uncomfortable, but that's more of a them problem rather than an us problem. And I think that but like if you look at countries around the world or cultures around the world where women are like not allowed to go to school when they're on their period, or they're like they're excluded from society for like very normal human things. They can't ask these questions in public. And that's what actually is my driver with Diem is we have like growing user bases in India, in Iraq, in Dubai, in all, sort of Saudi Arabia, all these countries in which like women a lot of the time are still deemed second-class citizens, or at least their experiences are. And I think that being able to reach them with tools like a Diem where they can ask those questions because they can't say it out loud, is, I think, the most impact that we could have.
How did you make sure Diem reached those regions, or how does that work?
We didn't target them. It just
happened.
It just happened.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. But I do think that we are obviously having this conversation in a very privileged environment.
Definitely. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Another really interesting question I saw online and that we asked Diem, is it okay to ask my husband to contribute to the cost of birth control? It is.
That's my favorite question.
Yes, it's such a good question because it's something we don't think about until we see someone else ask that question. Then you're like, oh, of course, it's not just me. It's a mutual responsibility. Mm-hmm. So we asked Diem.
Actually, more of a responsibility.
Responsibility, yeah.
We can't get pregnant every day of the month.
Yeah.
They could impregnate us, though.
Every day, every hour.
Yeah. Well, they could impregnate someone, not just us.
Good point. So the answer Diem told me is birth control is not just a women's issue. It's a shared responsibility between partners. It's important to have open and honest communication about birth control and the financial burden it may place on one of the partners. Asking your husband or partner to contribute to the cost is not only fair, but it also shows that you value their input and support in this aspect of your relationship. I love how nuanced Diem is.
I know. Well, it's
That's great.
It's trained on like women's conversations, so there's a lot of nuance.
Yeah. Do you ever face resistance from certain people when you created this platform?
We've had actual incels try and like send death threats and whatnot.
Do you personally?
Yeah.
Or, oh wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
I don't know. They can't do anything. It's fine.
Okay.
I also grew up with a following. I've like had a follower since I was like 19. I feel like I've experienced every level of internet harassment that you can. So I'm somewhat desensitized to it.
Okay.
Maybe it's a bigger deal than I'm letting on.
Probably.
I think also when you feel that you always have people for and against things. And that's the thing, the power of community. If you have like a strong community, you know why you are doing these things.
They also defend you. Like the times that we've had people be bad actors, everyone will like comment on all their posts or like, I don't know. It's quite funny.
Yeah, and it's
like this little mob.
You have your gang behind you,
and they all support you.
Yeah. Okay. And that's cool about communities. I think. Yeah.
What are the most common questions you receive on the platforms?
We got a lot of questions about like quitting the pill because a lot of women are scared to get off the pill. So we help. There are also a lot of questions about if men have a cycle.
What do you say to them?
They do have a 24-hour cycle, don't they?
They have one. Yeah. They have one. So we also have a blog article about it. So it's funny to have. And I think it's important to also not exclude men because we need to have them also in the conversation so that they also get a better understanding of us and themselves. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually... Once Diem is $1 billion company, multi-billion-dollar company, my next thing I want to focus on men and masculinity. I think that's a larger problem for women than anything else. It's like the rising like violence against women epidemic is not women's fault. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I completely agree. Men need to be more focused on.
They also struggle.
Like it's like the world is changing from how they were raised, and yes, men were raised far more entitled than women were, but it's like how are they, if they don't have the tools to like adjust to that new environment, then the first port of call is to be defensive, and that's like one of the largest problems. But
is that the way you want to take the platform in the future? Like
no, this is a separate company.
Okay.
Or just more, not a company, I don't know, more like a non-profit or something.
How about Diem? What do you want to do in the future with Diem? Where do you want to take it?
I want Diem to become like a browser. Like I want it to be like your front door to the internet. Okay. I don't know, maybe we'll build a computer, who knows.
Just for Diem?
Just for people who want a more Diem outlook on technology in the world. Yeah.
Do you have similar ambitions with Good Woman?
Of course, with Good Woman, we also have the products, but from day one, we didn't even start with the products. We started by educating and then providing support, and we always want to be more than products. And I think it's important that people get the support they deserve and the products they need. And I think having that combination is something I want to work further on, and not just like launching new products without context or without the right information and the right support. Yeah.
Okay. We skipped over the most common questions on Diem. No, I'm just very curious. I want to know, what is the most asked question?
I can give you generalized topics.
Yeah.
Questions is a little harder. But anything reproductive health, sex, relationships and dating, sexuality, money in the context of lifestyle. So like, I'm moving in with my partner. How do we split finances? That kind of a question. Then, career and confidence. So it's kind of a lot, but a lot of it stems back to confidence in some shape or form.
Okay. Is there with platforms like Diem? Is there an issue of potential misinformation, or how do you deal with that?
It's hard to control, like, humans from sharing misinformation, but what you can do is create algorithms and community moderation that like at least minimizes it. I think that one thing we don't talk about a lot with misinformation and just in general sort of quote unquote bad quality content is the way it's presented, like the actual UI of that content. So right now we have feed structures, like everything looks equal because it's all stacked on top of each other. But what if you could visualize the data that you're consuming differently? What if you could see it in the context of a word cloud, or you could see where this opinion or this piece of content sits in the grand scheme of the like topic or the question. And that's what we're really excited about, is more just like less about trying to control what people share beyond what we are able to, and more about how others can consume it and understand it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's also a difference between when someone is asking advice, then I think it's important to have like information that is not misleading. But then you also have people sharing experiences, and that can also be super helpful without having like misinformation, just explaining like how your experience was, for example, at a gynecologist, or how lost you felt, or the answers that you were looking for. And then the experiences are also super meaningful and wordful, I think, for people when they are looking for something. And then you have like more the information that is we love to use, backed by science, and that's why we work with experts from day one. We are surrounded by experts such as midwives or nutritionists or gynecologists and so on. So for me, it's a difference in the kind of information you out there.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, well, it's been a pleasure talking to you both. Thank you for letting us know your thoughts and experience. So thank you, Emma and Morgane.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Pleasure. As we wrap up this episode on Taboos, we want to thank you, our listeners, for joining us in breaking the silence around these important topics. Don't forget to share this episode with your friends and your family. You can find a lot of additional information in the show notes, or if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the Good Woman team at goodwoman.com. In our next episode, we'll be diving into one of the biggest taboos of all, sexual health.
Yeah, we want to make sure our moms have orgasms once in their life.
Bye-bye. This podcast was brought to you by Good Woman, produced by the audio collective Velcro, based in Belgium.